Karen. Karen will conclude our conference with the Botstiber lecture, as we call it, a lecture that Karen decided to entitle QAnon Rise in Austria. So Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joren. I'm really glad to be here, and I also appreciate that so many people are still attending this conference. I can imagine that you are all tired after listening to such excellent presentations. I would like to say at the beginning that a couple of the topics or dimensions, aspects I will touch in my presentation have already been addressed today. So this makes my life to some extent easier because I can shorten my presentation. But I would like to start with some background information why I chose QAnon's rise in Austria as a topic for this Botstiber lecture. I find it very interesting that QAnon, which is one of the most bizarre conspiracy theories of modern times, has significantly gained ground in a couple of European countries during the last 2 years. Fueled by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has functioned as kind of a catalyst or a fire accelerant. One of these countries is Austria. QAnon's spread in Europe, interestingly enough, has gone less noticed for more than 2 years, since it first emerged in Europe in 2017. However, more and more people have joined QAnon on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and then most recently, especially on Telegram and Twitch, because they were blocked on the other social media, and quite a number of European QAnon branches have sprung up online since spring 2020, comprising anti-vaxxers, government skeptics, white supremacists, and far-right activists. The idea that the pandemic is part of a plan imposed by world elites, by liberal world elites, mainly with Bill Gates at the top, is the message QAnon is spreading throughout Europe. Also, protests against measures to fight COVID assemble heterogeneous groups of activists. The influence of the far right, which is quite agreeable to QAnon's ideas, has grown over the months and the years. QAnon's theories perfectly fit coronavirus conspiracy constructions, such as the idea of a secret plan pertaining to vaccination programs or supposed dangerous manipulations by powerful individuals and archon societies. Moreover, QAnon narratives can easily be connected to the main stories about the Great Replacement and also to the story about the Great Reset, propagated by diverse far-right groups in Austria, such as the Identitarian Movement. I would like to present the focus of this paper. This paper does not discuss different European countries from a comparative view, but just Austria, because I consider Austria is a very interesting case in this regard due to its particular history and political culture, and the underlying anti-pluralistic, anti-liberal, anti-Semitic patterns that mold the political culture of Austria, because this can help to explain why centuries-old conspiracy theories that have returned from the United States to Europe in new garments currently achieve such success. It has to be mentioned that Germany would be certainly the most worrying venue for QAnon in Europe, but throughout Europe, this movement becomes stronger and stronger. And also in Austria, it's meanwhile under surveillance from state authorities. So I'm interested in how core narratives of the QAnon conspiracy theory are represented, especially in the Corona rallies. I would briefly mention my methodological approach because this differs from other presentations. I am following the tradition of interpretive policy analysis, which is about the construction of meaning. I do not aim at generating general laws and principles. Instead, study this presentation is based on concentrates on language, on the use of words, on discursive strategies, such as naming, labeling, attributing, and on imagery. Visual representations are as important as discursive representations, in my opinion, even more important sometimes, because they are easy to remember, they are fast to process, and likely to evoke emotional responses. So I am at the reconstruction of text frames and visual frames, and I would like to introduce 5 of them to you, including some examples. The database is Austrian daily and weekly newspapers, the online version. I do not mention all of them, but among them the Standard, die Presse, die Wiener Zeitung, Kronenzeitung, Österreich, but also die Furche and Profil. And I also took ORF.at, the National Broadcast Agency, their online version. I also took this into consideration, and I conducted observations, distant and participant observation at some of the Corona rallies in Vienna. So the frames I would like to introduce are, the first is QAnon symbolism. The second is the reference to the protection of children. The third is the idea of the Great Replacement and Great Reset. And then 2 forms of anti-Semitism. One, the traditional common version of anti-Semitism, which is represented at the Corona rallies, and then a rather bizarre form of anti-Semitism, which is really new and developed during these rallies. QAnon symbolism, I won't elaborate on this because it's really very clear, in my opinion. What is meant is that the QAnon symbol more and more is represented on the streets when these Corona rallies, so-called Corona rallies, are organized. And in most cases, in a syncretic sea of flags, so you see the peace flag and a lot of Austrian flags and the flag of Switzerland, and you could also find other ones. So it's really a very interesting mixture, and it is an indicator how diverse these movements are. What might be more interesting is the reference that is made to the idea of that children have to be protected against child molesters. And this is not a visual reference to QAnon, but it's a clear reference to the Pizzagate story and to the hijacked hashtag Save Our Children hashtag. And I would draw your attention to one event that happened in September 2020 and was widely discussed in Austrian media and also among the politicians. It was in a protest in the first district of Vienna, where right-wing activists really shocked the public because a group of 3 individuals standing on the stage they ripped apart a rainbow flag with a double heart in front of a cheering crowd. And with members of this crowd were, for example, activists of the identitarian movement. And the message was that the liberal elites of this world are all involved in, or are involved in a child trafficking ring of pedophiles, and would hold children captive and torture them and kill them on a grand scale in order to get this substance adrenochrome, or to drink their blood, or to kill them, or to abuse them. This idea of a blood-sucking, ruthless elite that abuses and even perhaps kills or eats children is recalls a propaganda about Jews drinking the blood of Christian babies, which was very common in 15th century, and also before in the Middle Ages. And it is qualified, or it can be qualified, as the 21st century version of the blood libel. The idea of a global conspiracy of elites is always deeply anti-Semitic. Liberal globalists is always, at least in the German-speaking world, a code for Jews. And you can read here this quotation, what the woman who was the main actor in this event, what she said, that you are not, you means those who were accused. And in this case, those liberal international elites were also identified as the members of the LGBTIQ plus community because of the flag, because of the rainbow flag. And this was an absolute a big scandal. But this is common, this reference to protecting children, to protect them against pedophilia, and so on. So my next frame would be the Great Replacement frame and the Great Reset frame. I won't go into detail because Andreas has spoken about the Great Replacement. Just draw your attention to the Austrian, to the Viennese version, and to the slogans which are which can be read on the on these placards and what people carry with them. So first is on the left side of this slide is Great Replacement, Great Reset. So it means both of these conspiracy ideas in one slogan. Stop the globalist dirt. It can't be translated very well, but it's again the reference to globalists, and it is the Great Replacement idea. And the Great Reset means that the economic elite, the financial elite, again, this is a reference to anti-Semitism, has a clandestine plan to reset the world economy, and this would have a huge impact on people, especially those from the elderly generation. The other slogan, the government plans genocide, is even more weird, and also a slogan that suggests that we, the people, wir sind das Volk, is you can read it on this poster, that we will resist, because the slogan on the red sign that suggests that you will, you means the elites or the government, you will not catch us, or you cannot force us to do what you want us to do. Means get the vaccination. The common anti-Semitism frame is very clear. So Soros has to go, Rothschild has to go, Rockefeller has to go, the Illuminati have to go, and the Freemasons have to go. This is also from a Corona rally where one of the activists, a lady who later decided that she will run for the H.C. Strache, new founded party for the Viennese local parliament. She was a leading figure of this Corona rally, and she shouted these slogans and clapped her hands. And what's really interesting is that in one single chanted sentence, she names almost all the targets of the most common anti-Semitic conspiracy myths. And this shows, in my opinion, how present conspiracy myths, especially around the Corona lockdown, have become in parts of the Austrian society. Yeah, the international banking elite and the Freemasons and the Illuminati, the family Rothschild is perhaps one of the most common codes for Jews. From my point of view, the most interesting frame is this bizarre anti-Semitism that is very visible in these Corona rallies. Again, a visual reference to QAnon, but also to stories to QAnon conspiracy theories. Here you see, for example, a man who is dressed the Israeli flag, and he speaks with another participant in the rally who carries the QAnon flag together with this very famous slogan. The other two images show persons who either attach the yellow star on their jacket, or what is even more scary is the guy in the upper right corner, on the image on the upper right corner of this slide, who holds a paper on which the gate of the concentration and extermination camp Auschwitz-Birkenau is painted, and the slogan is that that vaccination makes you free. So it's a modification of these infamous words that were put at the entrance of this concentration and extermination camp. So bizarre anti-Semitism means that this anti-Semitism is practiced by people who themselves make them victims and name themselves the new Jews. So this is why they wear this yellow star and all the other symbols. So on the one hand, it is telling the conspiracy theories about the liberal elites, about the Jewish financial world elites that organize a conspiracy against the people. And on the other hand, those people stage themselves and see themselves as the new Jews because they see themselves as a minority which is excluded because of Corona policy. So the question is who benefits from these developments, and I would say in Austria we have at least two winners of these developments and of this framing of the measures against the coronavirus. One is the Austrian Freedom Party, the far-right, right-wing populist to far-right Austrian party, which very recently improved from 16 to 19% of the potential vote share, because they were almost destroyed after the Ibiza scandal, which has already been discussed today. And because the new party chairperson, Kickl, he stages himself as the one and only who really fights for the right of the people, for freedom, for democracy, and against those authoritarian ideas, supposed authoritarian ideas of the government, as he calls it. And for him, these corona rallies are the festivals for freedom, and this apparently works. So recently they really improved their share of the votes, when according to the polls at least. And the second winner of these developments, of this influence of QAnon and the new arena and stage the corona rallies provide is certainly the identitarian movement, or let's say the activists of what was this identitarian movement. I show you a tweet, I show you the Twitter account of Brittany Sellner. She has already been mentioned a few minutes ago. And this is a tweet which she pinned, and it is from a corona rally, and the slogan freedom. And if you look at other pictures from this same event, you see the Great Exchange and you see the QAnon symbol. So the idea of Great Exchange and of an international liberal elite which takes away our freedom and is a threat to the Austrian people is really also fueling and supporting the identitarian movement and other right-wing extremist movements as well. So it's not by chance that also neo-Nazis like Küssel used to attend the corona rallies. So why does this work very well in Austria? Why is Austria a suitable playground for QAnon-like conspiracy narratives and stories and ideas which are taken from QAnon, or which are very agreeable with QAnon? I would say it is because of the particular political culture patterns of Austria, and Austria does not have very strong liberal traditions, to put it mildly. Anti-Semitic patterns are relatively strong, and they are also anchored in the political and public discourse. You can see this while taking a lot of quotes from politicians as examples. And the third very important argument, in my opinion, is that right-wing populism in Austria has reached the political mainstream. Meanwhile, at least at the latest, since 2016, 2017, I would say that in the first election campaign, which Sebastian Kurz, the ex-chancellor of Austria, ran, that there was almost no difference between the Freedom Party and the Austrian People's Party, because Kurz stole the talking points from the freedom party, so to speak, and made migration his signature issue. And yeah, this is very closely related to ideas of great exchange. He never would have used this word himself, but it was really very similar to what usually can be heard from the right-wing extremist parties. So QAnon's footing is especially strong among the far-right Freedom Party and the identitarian movement, but it has also to be taken into consideration that belief in conspiracy theories, and conspiracy theories always can be considered a threat to democracy because they work very well as radicalization multipliers. That about 25% of the Austrians, which is a quarter, believe at least to some degree in conspiracy theories. So they say, according to surveys, they say, for example, okay, there can be some truth in conspiracy theories. I do not say that they buy the whole package, but at least some aspects are really taken also by 25% of the so-called average Austrians. And I think 25% is a lot. And finally, I would like to draw a comparison, or just to add two thoughts from a comparative point of view. I did not speak about other countries than Austria, but taking France into consideration, taking Italy, taking especially Germany, you see that QAnon works as a conspiracy theory sponge, as some kind of a meta-conspiracy or a tent conspiracy or an umbrella conspiracy. These are all words which are used, and it is able to comprise a lot of other conspiracy narratives and theories, and at the same time it adopts Europe-centered narratives and merges them with national and local conspiracy theories which are already in place, and also with local and national concerns. And in this regard, QAnon is at the same time a very new and a very old phenomenon, with references to well-known anti-Semitism of past centuries and also in a modified form, but at the same time new because compared to other conspiracy theories, it completely dispenses evidence and relies only on assertions and insinuations. And the question is, perhaps we can start a discussion with this question, is whether this particular character of QAnon adds or makes this conspiracy theory a means to structure and reorganize European far-right movements and parties. Perhaps we are approaching, well, we are just in a new era of post-far-right politics. I believe that QAnon has high potential in this regard, and I only studied Austria as a first case, but I would very much be interested in further engage in comparative research. I'm very thankful for your attention, and I'm open to questions.